He's known for grace, not grudges, but behind Vince Gill's soft voice lies a fire forged by betrayal. Today, he reveals the artists he hated most, names tied to wounds Nashville never fully healed. At number 1, we have Kanye West, called out with just one line. After the 2015 Grammy Awards, Kanye stormed the stage when Beck won Album of the Year, claiming Beyoncé deserved it instead. The move outraged musicians across genres, but most stayed silent. Vince Gill didn't. At his next concert, standing before a Nashville crowd, he paused mid-set and said deadpan, "Hey, Kanye West, thanks for the publicity." No shouting, no sermon, just a calm cut from a man who values integrity in art above all else. Gill didn't need to insult Kanye, he just reminded everyone what mattered. For him, it wasn't about pop culture or trending names. It was about honoring the craft. That one moment revealed everything. Vince Gill didn't hate Kanye, but he hated what that moment stood for: disrespect, arrogance, ego over art. But Vince's sharp criticism wasn't aimed at outsiders, it hit Nashville's core. At number 2, we have the quiet war with bro country. In a 2014 interview with Rolling Stone Country, Vince Gill didn't name names, but the message was razor clear. He slammed the growing trend of shallow lyrics, overproduced tracks, and artists more concerned with image than soul. "You can't manufacture a connection with an audience. It's got to be real," he said. It was a subtle but unmistakable shot at bro country stars dominating the charts. We're talking songs about trucks, parties, and girls in cutoffs. Vince wasn't trying to trend, he was defending tradition. And he didn't care if it cost him radio play or headlines. To him, the genre wasn't just music, it was storytelling. And when artists traded depth for dollar signs, he didn't stay quiet. He drew the line and stood by it. The next one wasn't holding a sign, he held the spotlight. At number 3, we have Morgan Wallen, and Vince stayed far from silent. In 2021, a video surfaced of Wallen using a racial slur, sparking massive backlash. While many in country music avoided the topic, Vince Gill addressed it directly during a CBS interview. "It was just sad and disappointing," he said, his voice steady but firm. He didn't turn it into a spectacle. He didn't pile on. But the disapproval was unmistakable. Vince emphasized that country music needed to do better and hold its stars accountable regardless of chart numbers. It wasn't about canceling anyone, it was about what country should stand for. Vince's quiet condemnation cut deeper than outrage, because when someone like him, respected, calm, and measured, says he's disappointed, the entire industry listens. Then came a mullet, a dance, and a cultural explosion Vince feared. At number 4, we have Billy Ray Cyrus and a moment Vince couldn't ignore. In 1992, Achy Breaky Heart launched Billy Ray into instant stardom. The song topped charts, inspired line dances, and became a pop culture flashpoint. But for Vince Gill, it marked a turning point, and not a good one. In interviews from that era, Vince expressed concern that country was becoming more about flash than feeling. He never named Billy directly, but the message was clear. Substance was losing ground to spectacle. He once said, "I want to play songs that live longer than I do." That quiet comment stood in stark contrast to the frenzy surrounding Billy Ray. Vince didn't hate him, he feared what that kind of overnight success meant for the soul of country music, and he never chased the same spotlight. The next superstar rewrote every rule, leaving Vince quietly drawing his line. At number 5, we have Shania Twain, the icon Vince never criticized, but never chased either. When Shania burst onto the scene in the mid-90s, she changed everything. Fashion, visuals, pop production, it was a revolution. And while Vince Gill never publicly criticized her, he became the voice of a quieter resistance. In interviews, he emphasized authenticity and depth. "I'd rather play to 5 people with something real," he once said. While others leaned into the glamour, Vince doubled down on songwriting and tradition. There's no known feud, just a philosophical divide. Shania's sound filled stadiums, Vince's filled hearts. And though they shared stages at awards shows, their artistic worlds rarely overlap. He didn't envy her rise, he didn't copy it either. Because for Vince, country wasn't about being bold, it was about being honest. And that was a line he never crossed. But sometimes what Vince didn't say revealed everything he felt inside. At number 6, we have Jason Aldean. The controversy Vince never commented insisted on. In 2023, Aldean's song "Try That in a Small Town" sparked outrage for its racial undertones and imagery. The music video was pulled from CMT. Artists across the industry spoke out, some in defense, others in protest. But Vince Gill? He said nothing, and that silence spoke louder than most statements. This was the same Vince who once said, "Country music has to make everyone feel welcome or it fails." Aldean represented a growing cultural divide that Vince had quietly resisted for decades. His values were consistent: kindness, unity, and truth in storytelling. His refusal to co-sign controversy wasn't passive, it was principled. Sometimes not speaking is how Vince makes his sharpest point, especially when the music starts to echo something far more dangerous. The next name wasn't his enemy, just everything he refused to become. At number 7, we have Garth Brooks, the friend who lived Vince's opposite life. There was no feud. In fact, Vince Gill inducted Garth into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2012 with heartfelt words. But make no mistake, their careers couldn't have been more different. Garth was pyrotechnics, stadium tours, and media blitzes. Vince was telecasters, songwriting circles, and quiet harmonies. "I never wanted to be the biggest," Vince once said, and that's the difference. Garth conquered the world with charisma and calculated spectacle. Vince built his legacy in dimly lit studios, one lyric at a time. There was mutual respect, but also quiet distance. Not out of envy, out of choice. Because for Vince Gill, fame was never the prize. The music was. And watching Garth take the throne only reminded him why he never reached for it. But even respect can feel like distance, especially when the words cut too deep. At number 8, we have Kristofferson, the legend Vince admired but never followed. There was no conflict here, just space. Vince Gill always praised Kristofferson's songwriting, even calling him a pioneer. But when he asked why he didn't cover more of his work, Vince offered a rare moment of vulnerability. Some of his songs just cut too close. I couldn't sing them. Kristofferson's lyrics were raw, jagged, brutally human. Vince, by contrast, often leaned into tenderness, harmony, and spiritual depth. Both were storytellers, but they spoke different emotional languages. The admiration was mutual. The collaboration? Rare. Not because of ego, but because of weight. Vince never avoided Kristofferson's songs out of critique. He avoided them because they cracked something open in him. And sometimes the greatest respect comes not from imitation, but from knowing your own voice and when to let another's speak. Behind every chart topper, Vince saw a dangerous trade he never made. At number 9, we have the fame chasers, the ones Vince refused to become. Over the years, Vince Gill has watched country music shift towards formulas, gimmicks, and fast fame. But he made his choice early. "I was never a hit chaser. I'd rather sing a real song for 5 people," he said in a candid interview. To Vince, success wasn't about platinum plaques or radio rotation. It was about soul. He turned down trends. He passed on over-polished collaborations. And when asked why, he didn't flinch. "I didn't want to lose myself chasing something that doesn't last." He's worked with legends, but only when it felt honest. In an industry obsessed with image, Vince chose legacy, and that quiet resistance against easy fame may be why his songs still live in people longer than any number 1 ever could. Was Vince Gill preserving tradition, or quietly drawing a line the industry refused to see? Let us know what you think in the comments.